was set up, and to introduce a couple of the prominent people with us tonight who are an integral part of the charity. We're also joined tonight by a number of the trustees of the Malki Foundation UK, and I'm very grateful for their ongoing support. And hopefully, as a result of that, we can spread the word within the UK regarding the existence and the activities of the charity, which really is doing God's work. It's an extremely important service, which sadly is not supported enough by the Israeli authorities, which means that it is very reliant upon the work of volunteers and generous donors. And therefore, it's extremely important that we are able to give everybody an update as to the challenges that have been faced by the charity, particularly over the last 2.5 to 3 weeks. The charity was set up as a result of a real tragic event. On the 9th of August 2001, in Jerusalem, the Sabaro Pizza restaurant, attended by dozens of young people, was sadly the victim of a suicide bomb. And the end result was that 16 people tragically lost their life, with many, many, many others maimed. Amongst those that sadly lost their lives was a young 15-year-old, Malki Roth. Malki was an exceptionally bright and vivacious young lady who was already a madracha leader amongst her school friends in Jerusalem, and was also very much a carer for her severely disabled younger sister. In the aftermath of what has been now very well documented, Malki's parents, Arnold and Frimet Roth, decided as a tribute to the daughter's short but wonderful life to set up a charity in her name that would assist disabled children, assisting them in getting the therapies that they vitally need, and to ensure that should their families be in a position and want the children who suffered from these disabilities to remain within a family unit rather than in an institution, that they would facilitate this with the activities of the charity. The charity recently went through its 21st anniversary, and in that period of time, it has helped innumerable young people, and of course, provide an ease of suffering to their families by making them feel part of the larger Malki Foundation family. And we're extremely proud of all of the work and hard work that continues to be put into the efforts of supporting these young people. I've personally been very privileged to see some of the therapy sessions in practice on my visits to Jerusalem. And I have to say that I was absolutely taken aback by the love and the care, the application, the dedication of very, very talented medical professionals who would provide therapy services such as speech therapy, music therapy, water therapy, horseback therapy, all sorts of types of therapies that would positively impact on the lives of these young children. But as we now know, on the 7th of October, life changed very much so in Israel. Everything is extremely well documented, although tragically, the truth often challenged in the wider media. But we all know the truth. We fully understand exactly the impact that this has had. And certainly, being of a certain age, I'm not quite old enough to remember the Six-Day War or the Yom Kippur War. And indeed, this is probably the first war that Israel has been involved in, which has been involved with that third area, the media, social media, global media. The fact, if you want to get coverage of what's going on in Israel, almost anywhere in the world, it's almost impossible to avoid. In many ways, we should be very, very proud of the fact that so many countries have stoically stood behind Israel and the support that it's given. And indeed, even in the wider media, there has been a huge amount of positive coverage of support. But of course, Amalek thrives through the generations in any guise. And sadly, today's Amalek for Israel is Hamas. Now, of course, the activities of the charity are very widespread. They travel throughout Israel. And of course, What a lot of our supporters are wanting to know is, are we able to continue those services? Are we able to support the therapists that we have, remembering that many are being called up as reservists? Are we able to support the families, particularly those that have been caught up in the south? So I'm delighted that we are able to bring along the founder of the charity, Arnold Roth, together with our chief executive, Ellie Cohen. This evening has been facilitated by our own Alison Cohen, who is the executive director of the UK board. And of course, we wouldn't have this audience today if it wasn't for the marvellous support of the trustees of the UK board, for which I'm extremely grateful, to getting the word out so quickly, because we put together a sizable interested audience at very, very short notice. So I would like to first of all call upon Arnold in order to introduce effectively the evening. Arnold, the floor is now yours.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Thank you very much, Alison. Thank you very much for the members of the Board of Trustees in the UK. And thank you very much to my colleague, Ellie Cohen, who's joining me here in Jerusalem. And let me also say that there are some other faces here that I'm very pleased to see attending. And my intention is to speak to everybody as if you don't know what we do, not to drag that out, but to establish some common ground and then to drill down into the things that the current very, very challenging environment does for the families whom we aim to assist, and many of whom, in a specific circumstances of the Gaza envelope communities, or Tef Aza, are going through one of the most challenging periods that anybody could ever imagine. Malki Foundation, as Jeff correctly said, exists in order to remember the life of Malki, and Malki's face is to the left of my talking head here on the screen, and it's hard for me to even think of her as the vivacious young woman that she was. That's the last picture we have of her. That was her picture taken at a birthday party on the night of the night before she was murdered, and it's the way we prefer to think of her. She was always smiling. The example that Malki embodied and which triggered the desire, the passion, the urgent need of Fremad and me and our friends to create a foundation that did good things in her name. That passion was no secret. Everybody who knew her knew just how much Malki was devoted to her little sister, her youngest sister, who was born beautiful and perfect, and then became desperately ill when she was a year old, and now lives with us. She's 28 years old. Everything that's happened between when she was 1 and when she was 28 would fill a movie if anybody ever cared to make one, and no one will. But it's the kind of movie that is being lived by families in many places around the world, in every society. What's different here in Israel is that thanks to the passion of Malki and the life that we're looking to remember when we do the work of the Malki Foundation, those families are not on their own, and I'm going to just explain a little more about how that works. The Malki Foundation exists to empower families. Why do families need to be empowered? Well, the families who have very disabled children have to turn to one of the world's best medical systems. The Israeli medical system is really exemplary in the ease with which you can access the services. The politeness of some of the providers of those services is perhaps not something we want to talk about here tonight, but the quality of medicine is. Medicine in Israel is at the very highest level. And we've never engaged in medicine. What we do is not medicine. What we do in the Malki Foundation is to step in to provide the paramedical services and equipment that the government ostensibly takes upon itself to provide, and then in practice often fails to provide it for a whole lot of reasons, many of them similar to the kinds of reasons that you'll hear coming out of Israel during this very difficult time of war, where everything is at the highest level of urgency. Everything needs to be done. Ministers of the government are appearing on television all the time telling us that all of these urgent things are being done, and then you discover that soldiers are out in the field and don't have food, or that equipment has turned up and it doesn't work, the typical things that happen in a complex system that is driven by, at the end of the day, politicians, and no matter how urgent the need, things tend not to work. We're not at war. At the Malki Foundation, we're not at war. We're not running an organization that deals with the needs of war, but in a sense we are. The war that we're addressing is the war that every family with a child with special needs knows from up close, a war where all you want is the best that you can possibly provide for your very damaged child. And the children that we reach out to are in large measure very damaged, and that you will push for because you're the parent. The alternative, and this is speaking in the most brief of terms, and I'm happy to drill down on another occasion for anybody who thinks that what I'm saying doesn't make sense. I believe it does. The alternative for such families, the alternative for my family, when we discovered that our child was always going to need very, very intense care, is institutionalization. Israel is a big believer in institutionalization. We are the alternative to institutionalization. Institutionalization will never deliver the results that well-equipped, well-supported, well-resourced parents who want to raise the child, who want to do the best for the child, will achieve. It will never be done better in an institution than it will be done in the home where the child is loved and is part of a family. That's, of course, the general philosophical position that we start with. The practice of it will seem in some ways quite boring. And it works like this. Family walks into the local branch of Kupat Cholim, the medical system, the arm of the government that delivers services through four separate funds that are supposed to compete with each other, all receiving payment from the same source, which is the government of Israel, which is the taxpayers of Israel, walks in and says, my child desperately needs horse riding because I've learned that because my child is blind and lacks X and Y and Z, there's very good reason to think that horse riding will really make a difference, or speech therapy, or putting my child into the water. My child can't support herself or himself. Being in the water is bound to do good things. And then to be dumbfounded when the clerk, who essentially handles all of the across-the-counter inquiries, says, no, we don't actually think so. Or, please be in line, we'll get back to you. And somehow what the child needs never gets done. We are precisely in that transaction, we, the Malki Foundation. We exist so that we can say yes when the system says no, or sorry, I don't hear you. There's a great deal of sorry, I don't hear you, which goes on in the system, in any system. But for parents who have a child who needs as much input, as much care, as much therapeutic intervention as possible, having a no or an I can't hear you is the last thing you want to hear. Now, if we had $1 trillion in our budget, we'd be helping a lot of people, but we don't. So we've helped something on the order of 3,000 families, and I always frame it in terms of families, since we got started. 3,000 families, every one of whom has a child who's in the Israeli system. They are Jewish or Christian or Muslim or Druze or non-committal. What they have in common is that they live in Israel, and they are enveloped by the Israeli medical and welfare system, and it doesn't always work all that wonderfully well. There is a preoccupation in Israel with providing institutional care. That's a whole separate discussion. Institutions are, generally speaking, well-funded and larger than they are in many other countries. And every day, decisions are made by authorities, by policymakers, that favor institutional solutions over any other sort of solution. That's not what we do. We're here as the alternative. We're here to stand with the families. The word we use is empower, to empower the families so that they can keep the child with them. Now, how does that translate into what we're doing here tonight? The first thing is for me to say, not by way of apology, but by way of explanation, we won't be showing video clips with violins in the background or marching music with brave parents holding photogenic children who are getting services from us. There are two reasons for that. The first and major reason is we never identify the children whom we benefit, whom we serve, whose families we serve and help. And this is all about empowering the family, not exploiting the family, not putting the family to the forefront and having them raise money for us, providing in a respectful and quiet way, which doesn't draw attention to the family, but draws attention within the family to what can be done for the child. I mentioned marching music in a deliberate way, because all of us have been subjected over these last 2 weeks to stirring images, and so we should be, of Tzahal, which means every young man and woman in this country getting ready to defend the country, because as we all know, we're in an existential moment. I could easily fill the remaining 5 hours of this presentation with stories about how the whole country has rallied together, expressing unity and solidarity and support for one another in ways that are they're exemplary. I won't. But I know that everybody who is Israeli or has family in Israel probably has somebody on the border. My family does. Everyone else that I can identify here in this call who's from Israel or connected to Israel does. We are a unique people. We're unique in many respects, but one of those respects is that when we're threatened, we are so few in number that we need to be doing everything together and setting aside all of the divisions and complications that I don't need to tell anybody about. We've been plagued with them over the last 9 months. They're going to come back, but in the meantime, everyone is together with a clear understanding that we are facing an existential threat and an enemy whose brutality and monstrosity is almost incapable of being expressed in words. So what do we bring to the table at a time like this? We bring 3 programs, and I'm going to focus on one. One program is we provide equipment to families. That's gone through some important changes. This isn't the time to talk about them, but we provide equipment for families that makes several degrees easier the task of raising a child at home without having to go and remortgage your home to get the equipment that you need. Second is we provide support for families who have the capacity to go out and find a therapist in the 5 therapeutic areas that we focus on for their child: physical, occupational, speech, horse, and water. Say it again: physical, occupation, speech, horse, and water therapies. We provide a very effective safety net for those families. The 2 key statistics are, number one, we give them back, Ellie, correct me if I'm wrong here, 80% of the money that they lay out for the 85% of the money that they lay out for the services. That's the first statistic. And the second statistic is, in every case, they have gotten 0 response for that particular service from their medical fund, from Kupat Cholim. It's a cruel world, and this isn't the time here to talk about social engineering or changing the way policies work. We stand there as a safety net. Nobody needs to be told by anybody else, go try to solve this by having a fight with somebody in the Knesset or in the ministry or in the Kuppah or in the head office of the Kuppah. We provide a solution because we know how urgent these needs are. That's what we do for people who have the ability to go out and find a therapist for themselves. May not have the money to do it, but we say yes. The third program is one that I want to talk about now. There are people in large swathes of Israel, the north and the south, the periphery, or in Hebrew, the peripheria, who live too far and in remote locations for there to be a multiplicity of therapists available for their child's needs. And we recognize this almost at the very beginning. We didn't set up this program at the very beginning. It took the coming together of several fortuitous events. I don't know if she's here, but Dr. Ruth Litt is an angel who was sent to us more than 20 years ago, a woman with a lifetime of experience in medical care and medical administration, who is the linchpin of the program that we call Therapists on Wheels. And that's a program where the needs of families too far away to be able to make a free decision about how to get a therapist, because there aren't therapists or there aren't therapists that are available, can get therapeutic services at the highest level and have experts essentially sitting at their elbow, helping them make the right kinds of decisions and ensuring that the therapy that's delivered, always in the home, in the periphery, it's always in the home, is done in the most effective way. Now, at this point, I'm going to pause and say, those are the 3 programs. Now let me talk about how war turns all of this upside down. Ellie's going to explain, Ellie Cohen, who's the director of our activities here in Jerusalem, how the total destruction of ordinary life, of the ability to drive down the street, of having shops that you know are open, ended on the 7th of October for many thousands of families. Among those families are 20 or 25 who live within 15 kilometers of the border with Gaza. Ellie's going to talk about some of the specific experiences. Allow me to give a sort of a top-down view of what we see and what we're doing. Those families cannot look after their children. In some cases, those families have been hit in a very personal way by the monstrous invasion of awful savages in the service of Hamas. In many cases, I would say in almost every case, Ellie, again, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, they have left the Otef Aza, the southern region around the Gaza Strip, and are now temporarily living elsewhere. And what happens to the child who's blind or can't walk or needs massive intervention of non-medical therapies now that the family is temporarily living in the middle of the country or the north of the country or some other part of the country? And the answer is fend for themselves. If they come from a kibbutz, in other words, a community that for years had looked after the mutual interests of all of the people living together, then the move was very often done in the last 2 weeks as a group decision. But what if you're on your own? It's a very different world. I'm going to leave to Ellie to describe in detail some of the experiences of the families who have had to do this on their own. What it's meant for us through our activities, we as an organization that sends our own therapists to the far north and the far south, is to rethink overnight what we need to do to take stock of where the families are in terms of the child's needs, what services they can avail themselves of wherever they now are, what their capability is in availing themselves or even finding out what those services are. And here I'm just going to say something that I know Ellie will expand on, but you need to hear it in the most forceful way. Those families are in trauma today. I just came from the home of one of my sons. He's an architect. What does he have to do with any of this? Well, he's a busy architect who has spent the last 4 days without telling us, and I just found out tonight, driving down, leaving home at 4 o'clock and taking friends with him to pick fruit and other crops in the south for farms and farmers who are, in some cases, grappling with a sitting shiva for children or partners or parents who were murdered in the last 2 weeks, and have crops that are now ready for harvesting, and they have no ability to deal with that need. The specific dimension that my son mentioned to me 2 hours ago just was astonishing to me. I haven't heard anything like it. He said, this farm that I was at today, and he had a table filled with oranges in front of me. He said, take some oranges home with you. A farmer who's growing oranges has no ability to function right now. He doesn't know what an orange is right now. He's an orange farmer. His daughter is part of a school where 40 of her schoolmates were killed in the last 2 weeks. I don't say this for the shock effect. I say it so that in some way we can all try to come to terms with how much trauma there is in Israel in general, because we're all at war, but in the southern communities in particular, in ways that actually defy comprehension. They're living in a civilized society. They meant no harm to anybody around them. In many cases, they were peace activists. And suddenly, members of the family, and sometimes multiple members of the family, are no longer alive in the most awful of circumstances. I want to just wrap my part of this up by saying that the spirit of Israel is never more clear in its utter contrast with the spirit of the society around us over the border than at times like this. Hamas has sent people, 2,500 of them, according to the numbers that are being bandied around, in order to destroy families here. What we're seeing is a real expression of strength on the part of families, but we're also seeing families who won't get there without help. In many cases, the families who won't get there without help know that for years, the Malki Foundation has been providing therapy services and equipment to them when nobody, and in particular the Kuppar, didn't. There are a lot of reasons for this. None of them are good reasons. None of them are acceptable reasons. But the bottom line is, at a time of extreme stress, the excellent staffer in our office in Jerusalem has been taking call after call from people saying, what can I do? What can you do for me? Where can I get help? Ellie has spent time in the South over these last few days, just taking stock, getting some first-hand experiences, and he's going to take over from me. But I just wanted to say, in wrapping this up, that you may have noticed that I keep harping away at give us money. I'm sorry, I haven't actually said that at all. This isn't an appeal. This isn't one of those meetings. This is a time where I'm sure no one in this call fully understands, or hasn't understood until now, what it is that we do, at least in respect of what we do in the periphery communities. And it really is very special. There's no organization in Israel that has a focus like this of empowering families in general across Israel, dealing with the challenges of raising a disabled child, and in the what is now the war zone in the south, and heaven forbid it should become the war zone in the north as well. There are absolutely special needs, and we're an excellent organization for, in an agile fashion, reorganizing our product offering, our service offering, in ways that meet those needs. At this point, Jeff, if you could take back the baton and allow this event to continue. I'll be happy to take questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Arnold. In a minute, we're going to be hearing from Ellie, our Director of Operations in Jerusalem, right at the very heartbeat of our activities. But for those of you that have any specific questions to ask, you'll be able to use the raise hand facility, which you'll see on your Zoom icon, and then you'll receive a direct message from the administrator who's running the Zoom for us, Josh, and then you'll be able to ask the question directly to him. And time permitting, we'll try and get through as many questions as possible. So thank you for that. And now I'd like to pass the floor over to Ellie, who has been in situ probably now for, well, predominantly during COVID, I suspect it was, Ellie, but we've only met once or twice as a result. But Ellie Cohen, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Arnold. And thank you all for joining us. I'll try to be a little more practical and share with you the work that we were doing since the war started, and share with you a little bit from what we see and being in touch with the different families. So the truth is, it took us, I would say, at least 24 to 48 hours to wake up from the shock of the 7th of October. And the first thing we did is we're trying to get a hold of all the families to see what they're up to and if they're okay. And as Arnold mentioned, within the radius of 15 kilometers of Gaza Strip, we have close to 20 families, some of them right on the fence and some of them in the larger city towns around it. And so we started making calls that most of them, no one answered. We started using WhatsApps in order to see how they're doing. And it took us, I think, from the time we sent WhatsApps, we started getting some answers, I think, within 24 hours after that. Just to show you that people were totally in shock. They were busy with themselves, and some of them even busy trying to survive. So once we started getting a hold of the people, and thank God we found out that all of them physically are okay. But of course, the trauma was, we felt the trauma in the words or in the messages they sent. Some of them even refused to talk. They just sent us emojis of they're okay or they're praying. So we got the sense that things are pretty tough over there, and we gave them time. We didn't pressure them or anything like that. But slowly we got the full picture. And in parallel, we're thinking, what are the things that we ought to do in order to help these people? And the main goal that we set for ourselves is, as most of the families in that radius left their homes, not all of them, but most of them had, some of them left their homes voluntarily, some of them were forced to leave their homes, and we'll talk about it in a minute. They were left without therapies for their child. And we said that if a family moves from, for instance, from Sderot to the Tel Aviv area, the therapists that they have in Sderot that we give them will not be able to travel to Tel Aviv once a week in order to give them the therapy they need. And therefore, we should start looking for therapists and matching the therapists to the needs of the different children, wherever they are in whatever towns they are. That was the main goal that we set for ourselves. But as we started talking to the families, we realized that there's much more that we could do over there. And that's what we're doing. We're doing basically, the main core is really trying to find therapists, let's call them temporary therapists, to maintain some continuity of the treatments. And remember that these kids are already close to 3 weeks. They don't go to school. They don't get any treatment in school because there are no schools, and they're sitting at home. And that's the worst thing for a child that doesn't move his body when he has to, a disabled child. So let me just share the screen for a minute. I'll share with you some of the journeys that I took. Let me give me a second. Okay, I hope you see the screen. Let me just go. Sorry, 1 second. All right. So just to give you a sense of what we're talking about, and I'll use the mouse to emphasize. The Gaza Strip is over here. The towns that we're talking about we have Ofakim, we have Netivot, some of you are familiar, Sderot, and we have up over here Ashkelon. Okay, that's a little north of the map, where we have a big portion of the 20 families are from those towns. And just to share with you a story about a family that we spoke to in Ashkelon, that is right above where I'm over here, is when I call them and I talk to them, how you doing, and all the rest. So they have a story, and you should know that in Ashkelon, if a rocket is sent from the Gaza Strip, they have a siren that goes off, and they have 15 seconds to get into their safe room. So just to imagine what it is for a family like that, let's imagine all of us sitting now in our own homes or apartments, and we have 15 seconds to gather all our family members and rush into a safe room. Okay, and I could, again, if we would play a game, a game over here now, I could promise you it would take you more than 15 seconds to get your act together and go all together into one room. And here we have a case that a mother, parents, and a child with severe disabilities and a baby are in an apartment in Ashkelon, and the siren goes off. The mother was sitting in the safe room together with the child with the disabilities. He was basically on a mattress because there was no room to put in his special bed and have room for all the other children in the family and the parents to sleep in that room at night, because at night you don't have 15 seconds. So he was lying on the mattress, and the siren goes off. The mother has to run from the safe room to pick up the daughter, the baby daughter that's in the adjacent room, for whatever the reason was she was there, and rush back within 15 seconds back to the safe room. During that time that she ran to the room to pick up the baby and return to the room, her son rolled off, for whatever the reason is, off the bed and hurt his leg. So the siren is off, the missiles are blowing up in the air. Thank God there's the Iron Dome that's protecting them. But once it's over, they have to call an ambulance and basically take the kid to the hospital, to the emergency room, to see if he's okay. So just to get into the atmosphere that these people have, it's bad enough that we have a war, but when you have a disabled child, it becomes much harder. much, much harder than we could even imagine. So this is one of the things that I said, wow, I'm with these families already for 2 years, and you just can't fathom how different and difficult it is for them to cope with the reality, especially when there is a war. It just happens to be this family. Beginning of this week, they moved to a city more in the center of the country to ease things for themselves. That's one example. Another example is I spoke to a family, this time from Sderot, that they unfortunately, a missile hit the parking lot of their home. Their all was safe, but their car was totally damaged, and it's a car that they need for their child that has a lift in it, a special vehicle for disabled people. And the thing is, they did manage to move from Sderot to a city in the center of the country, but they don't have a car. And what it means is they're housebound, probably for the next 3 or so months, because until they order the car and they modify it to the needs of the child, that's pretty much the amount of time that it will take. And the kid will basically, and the family will be homebound at that period of time. So this is just to get a sense of it's beyond, at least what I feel. It's not the issue of just finding a therapist, which is very important for the child, but you really sense how difficult it is for these families. And what we do is we try to help them in other areas as well. Again, connecting them to other organizations of people that could really help them, even a babysitting service of volunteers that could spend a few hours with a kid every afternoon to give the parents some time for themselves. When we move we have a family with a child living in Netiva Asara, which is right on the border of Gaza. Miraculously, they got out. It's already almost 3 weeks, and all we do is we communicate by WhatsApp. They're not open enough yet to talk to us about what they need, what they faced. They basically were evacuated, sent down to Eilat, and last week they were set up in Tel Aviv in a hotel. And again, with them, we're trying to find a match and with a therapist that could come and start treating the child at least once a week or maybe even more. We had a group of we have a family in if you look over here in Kibbutz Nachal Oz, and Nachal Oz is not a big kibbutz, but they suffered the most percentagely than anyone else. Them too, they managed to get out somehow, and they're living near up north, near Yokneam. And again, a similar story. We're in touch with them, and they're doing a little better because they're with family, so it makes it a little easier living up north. What I want to share with you now is we have a speech therapist living in Kfar Aza. Again, place that suffered severely. She's a speech therapist that works with our children, and again, it took until Sunday night, I think, or maybe even after that, until she got back to me. When she basically wrote to me, again, it wasn't up to even talking. And she wrote to me, I'll read you the message she wrote to me that evening, telling me that the IDF has evacuated us and we're on the way to Eilat. What we survived is a miracle. May we all know better quiet days. That's basically the message I got from her. It took 3 days after that until I managed to talk to her on the phone. And basically, again, just the only thing that I did is once they moved up towards in the area of Tel Aviv, Wednesday night, I told them, listen, I'm coming over, I'm bringing pizzas for you and the kids. And that was it. I came over with the pizzas. She has a 10-month-old baby and a 3 or 4 year old girl. And they got an apartment, a house, together with 2 or 3 other families from their kibbutz, and we sat there, and it was unbelievable. The expressions of thanks were the little, 3 pizzas that I brought over with a Coke meant so much to them. And slowly they did open up. And I just would say, I said, listen, what's the story? What happened? I got the guts to ask them. And they said that they don't know why they weren't attacked. Their apartment wasn't attacked. They have no idea, because many apartments and homes were attacked. They sat for 20 hours in the safe room, in the mamad, with a 10-month-old baby, and keeping the door locked, hearing all the Arabic around them and the shooting and everything else, until the army came and managed to get them out of there. So they're luckily, I don't know if it's luckily or not, but their kids are very young, and I don't think how much they really understand, or at least we don't know how much they really understood compared to older kids that you see that they're in deep trauma. I suggested, we had an opportunity. We have one of our friends and donors that owns a home in Caesarea, which is north of Tel Aviv, and he has a outdoor heated pool. And he said, listen, if you have families or people that that could come and enjoy a half day or a day, or want to stay over, please invite them over. So I mentioned it to our therapist. I said, listen, why don't you take the kids, spend a half a day, and go have fun over there and relax a little bit. Really. She looks at me like a little puzzled and thankful, and she says, I can't. So I asked her, well, why not? And she says, we're mourning. I can't go and have fun now. So what we see is that, thank God, physically they're okay, but they're still in the stage of the trauma. I don't think they're even in the stage of the post-trauma yet. So, and again, I'm saying we're in touch, being there, calling them means so much to these families. And it's beyond just being there and giving them what they really need, of the therapists that we're trying to bring over and to fill in the gap over there. It's just that they went through so much real hell, I must say, excuse my language. But hopefully, again, like Arnold mentioned, the whole country is drafted and is united in order to help and do whatever they can in order to move out of this general trauma that we are. So I think if I look at Karen Malki, or at the Malki Foundation, I think one of our biggest advantages that we have is the fact that, as a policy and a strategy, we're in the homes of the families for years. We know the families, we know the kids, and we feel close to them, and they feel close and open to us. And I think that gives us the ability and the opportunity to really be there for all these families. So I'm glad I had this opportunity to share with you a little bit of what's happening down on the ground, and how important what we're doing is, not just for the kids, for the entire family. I'll pass the speaker back to Jeff. And again, if you have any questions, I think we'll save it for, as Jeff said, for the end. I'll be happy to answer.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Eli. I really appreciate listening to some of the stories. It very much brings the work of the charity that we as volunteers and trustees in the UK don't really get the opportunity of hearing too much. In these days, particularly with the privacy laws and what have you, it's very difficult to showcase particular individual circumstances. And we can only imagine that those that we're looking to help are still very much going through the trauma phase. I'm very conscious of the time. We've been going for just over 3/4 of an hour, and everybody's been extremely patient. a lot of the questions that people did have were already answered within the presentation. So unless somebody's got specifically something additional that they'd like to add, I would like to thank everybody for preparing so well for this presentation at such short notice. The work that this charity does is extremely important. It's not a well-known charity. Having previously been involved with probably the largest Jewish charity in the UK, certainly maybe even in Europe, to go to one of the smallest ones, there's certainly a particular a change, very much a difference in emphasis. This is a very personal, very important charity because it reaches those in society that are so often neglected. We're looking to widen the net in terms of the level of support that we have. Alison, who's come on recently on board as our executive director, has been running a number of initiatives that will be circulated out to those people that have been kind enough to join us this evening. And as Arnold has said, we're not specifically using tonight as a fundraiser, but we all know in our heart of hearts that there are a number of extremely worthwhile causes, particularly in Israel right now. This is a charity that's very dear to my own heart and to the hearts of my fellow trustees, who are all going above and beyond normal duty in order to make sure that we can support this charity at a very, very difficult time. We need to be able to provide therapy sessions for displaced children. That is not going to be easy. Logistically, it's going to be very, very difficult. And no doubt that many of them will be returning to homes that no longer exist. They're going to have to be involved in rebuilding not only their homes, but rebuilding their lives. This is like no other conflict in living memory. And certainly it's going to be down to us within the diaspora who hold Israel so close to our hearts in order to make sure that we're extending every possible assistance that we possibly can. There's been a huge number of different not-for-profits and charitable organizations that have contributed resources, equipment, money, various different things. We've had people that have volunteered, that have gone in back to Israel, joined up with their old platoons, people that have been hosted in London because they were stranded in other parts of the world and couldn't get back to Tel Aviv. We've also had a tremendous amount of support from the wider community. And certainly, I think that everything that you, our audience, can possibly do to assist us will become evident over the course of the next few days. I'm going to leave the final words to our founder, Arnold Roth, and I'm sure that you'll all extend on our behalf in the diaspora to all of those that are working hard for the charity in Jerusalem and beyond. Our heartfelt thanks for all the work that you're doing, and to wish them much strength, some muzzle, and fortitude in these very challenging times. Arnold Roth.
Thank you again. I wanted to make a philosophical point here that has immediate practical implications. One of the differences between the nature of the work that we do, we've been doing it now for 21 years, nearly 22 years, and the work that's done by many other organizations, particularly those with an institutional focus, is that the central agent for the delivery of services is the family. This sounds like a speech about families, but it's not. It's a speech about how you get the best results for children with severe disabilities. We're now looking at a situation where in large swathes of the country, as I mentioned at the beginning, nothing's working, but families are always working. Institutions have shut down all over. One of the largest institutions in this country, tragically, which is a very high-profile provider of services of institutionalization, has lost to murder a number of its key staff and is somewhat paralyzed in its activities. That shouldn't happen to anybody. But in the world that we occupy, no matter what the challenges might be, you're talking about the most devoted care framework that exists in human nature, which is the family. And it's always been a puzzle to me that we don't see a greater awareness of that reality on the part of the policymakers and the people who spend the national budget. I can tell you that about 3 years ago, I had a meeting together with our then executive director, Debbie Fishman, with the officer in the Treasury here in Israel who provides advice to all of the service-providing arms of the Israeli government. And the conversation was, why aren't you spending more money on the families and spending so much money on the institutional care providers? And the answer that I got was stunning, and I try to mention it whenever I have interested people in front of me. He said, "You're right. If we could, we would. It's clearly the better way to go. It doesn't make sense to be building larger institutions in this country. It makes a heck of a lot more sense to have families as the deliverer of the care, but there are political reasons why we can't do that." And I want to tell you that it wasn't much comfort. And I would want to get in front of that same person right now and say what I just said to you a moment ago. The families are never going to give up on the child. The family is always going to be there for the child. The family is not always going to be able to do the very best because the resources aren't there. For heaven's sake, rejuggle, reprioritize, find another way to deliver your services, because Israel is the only country in the civilized world which has this propensity to shift resources into the institutional channel instead of the empowering of the family channel. That's one story. The second story is what Ellie didn't say is some of the things that we've been talking about in our strategic planning. We want to be juggling the way we operate now so that a family that was living in Kfar Aza and is now living in, I don't know, I'm going to say Haifa, but that's not a realistic place, but everyone knows where Haifa is, to get therapy services there. We can do it. We have a close relationship. And unlike the government, our position is not, you knock on our doors enough times and then we'll eventually give you a response. Our position is, you need help? Here, let's think together about how we can help you in the best way. We have a unique relationship with a significant number of families who have acute needs of a kind that they didn't bring upon themselves and that they address in ways that make all of us proud. People who look after their own damaged child are doing something holy and worthwhile, and the exact opposite of what we see going on in this awful war. When the Hamas come in to destroy families, what we're all about is, and Israeli society in general is all about, is empowering, strengthening, providing the kind of care and support and encouragement that allows a family to function better. It sounds like a speech, it sounds like a political statement. It's neither of the above. It's really just reinforcing here the core message that Malki left us with, which is, if I can make my damaged little sister happy, then that's what I want to do. You won't hear an institution say that. At this point, I want to say, if anyone has any questions, I'd be glad if you would just indicate that you want to ask a question. Otherwise, I'll just I'll leave it for Jeff to decide whether or not to wrap up now. Thank you again very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Arnold. No, we don't have any further questions. So I just want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. And hopefully the next time that we see each other, we'll be able to put some smiles on our faces. So wishing the whole of Kalal Yisrael lots of strength and fortitude in the forthcoming days. And may we only meet again on Simchat. Thank you very much indeed, everybody, and good night.